Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you. Welcome to the Relationship Matters live cast. Every Thursday, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We do this live, but of course, it's going to stay evergreen on my YouTube channel, also on the Relationship Matters page on Facebook. And so you can always go back and watch later there. And then a new feature, I started to put it into podcast format. So if you're on the run, you can go to Spotify or Apple or Google, whatever podcast platform you may listen to, and just search Mark Gordon or Relationship Matters by Mark Gordon, and you'll find it there. And you're going to want to listen to this one today. You're going to want to invite friends. I really want to encourage you as we jump into this, that I think there's going to be some amazing nuggets come out today. I've had a ton of conversations recently with parents who are just struggling with their teenagers. They're having a real difficult time with communication. There's so many messages coming in to their lives that it's affecting their ability to relate. And so I really believe I started this live cast to actually start the conversation about healthy relationships and how to have them at work and at home and wherever you are. And so I don't think there's a more important relationship than our spouses and our kids. And so I really focus a lot of time on that. And today I'm super excited because we have Darlene Unruh. Now, if you remember, Darlene was on with her husband, Kim, not too long ago, and they were talking about marriage and talking about how to have healthy relationships and whatnot. Today, I've asked Darlene to come on, and just to give you a little bit of background, Darlene's married to Kim for over 33 years. She's a mom and proud grandma. Woohoo, grandma. You don't look like a grandma, by the way, but you are one. She leads an amazing program called True to You. It is an abstinence-based program developed by Darlene from gathering resources, providing through local pregnancy care center. She has had incredible opportunities locally, nationally, internationally to provide presentations to students from grade 6 to university and schools, athletic organizations, both public and private. The training of youth influencers, including parents, is her passion, since they are the ones on the front lines. They are the ones having 1,000 little conversations instead of the one big talk about healthy relationships and healthy sexuality. Now, Darlene, I'm so excited to have you on because I think that this is such a critical conversation for this season and this time of life. There are so many messages being blasted at kids every day through social media, through media attempts. And I'm sure a lot of well-meaning people thinking they're helping them with their teenhood or their even children nowadays, but primarily the very front line that is most important is parenting. It's the parents' influence that's so important on kids, and yet we know through teen trends, the book written by Bibby, we just know that the parents are moving down the ladder of influence on their kids like rapidly. It's like a free fall. And I think that there's a way that we as parents can reclaim that. And so I'm really glad to have you on, Darlene. Welcome. I'm excited to jump into this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, Springfield Research Institute has been showcasing how teenagers are now listening to people who are in relational authority, not positional authority.
Right.
So that can let parents right into the front row, depending on how good their relationship is.
Right.
So it's not just going to be an automatic, well, you're my dad, unfortunately, because that message, that authority, that respect for authority is being undercut regularly across the board. For anyone who's ever been able to say, well, therefore, I'm an authority figure in this area, whether it's through education or being voted in or whatever, that just doesn't hold the same kind of cachet that it used to. But if we can develop those strong relationships, then they'll listen And not just listen, but they will interact and stay connected.
Yeah. I actually teach on that, the difference between relational and positional authority. And I think because positional authority has been abused and has been
Mm-hmm.
misused, it's
Mm-hmm.
been rejected, all
Mm-hmm.
authority. And that hurts you. That hurts the child. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
help them. It actually
Mm-hmm.
hurts them. But we also want them to be safe. And so when we have
Mm-hmm.
a healthy relationship with them, we teach them what a healthy relationship looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then they're better to know what authority to trust and
Mm-hmm.
who to trust in that sense, right?
And I do
It's
think a lot of parents, me included, we just tend to focus on where we've failed or where we've never been able to have good relationships, or, we don't feel like the authority in good relationships.
right.
So
Yeah.
therefore, we just think, well, what right do I have to talk about good relationships? Because maybe I'm, not married to their father, or maybe I have in my wake, not been able to maintain really healthy relationships with different friends, or any kind of abuse in the background. You start feeling like you're disqualified in some way,
Right.
which is not true, and
That's
yet I think we have these limiting beliefs about what
mm,
we can present to our kids. Instead of saying, I'm on a journey of discovery and I want a great relationship with you, let's see how this can happen. One of my favorite questions to not just, you know, my husband, but to my kids is, what can I do to build more trust in our relationship? And then listen and try to apply it,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
So, just if you're watching today, we want this to be an inclusive conversation. So, you can make comments or ask questions by just typing them into the comments, and I'll make sure they come right into the studio here. I'll make sure that Darlene gets those, and we can answer your questions. But if you also have something to contribute, please contribute. You're welcome to do so. So, Darlene, maybe we jumped right in there. I love that, by the way. But maybe let people that may not know you, which I can't imagine anybody that wouldn't. But if
Right.
if, if for those that maybe don't know you, like, what do you do? What is your day spent doing?
Well, I spend time developing, training people to present, as well as connecting with parents, teachers, youth influencers of any kind. And then during the week, Monday to Thursday, usually, sometimes on weekends, sometimes on Fridays or evenings, every once in a while, but generally Monday to Thursday, I try to be in schools, whether it's universities or colleges, youth organizations, hockey schools. This week, I'm in a private school. Next week, actually, I was invited to a women's group because they're concerned about their relationship with their kids and
Yeah.
what their kids are getting in terms of information from everywhere else. Um, Monday night, I'm with Lady of the Lake. So these are women who are in they're called contestants, I believe. And
Yeah.
so they're in a pageantry. And we're going to be talking about healthy relationships and healthy sexuality. And I'm trying to, I mean, I can condense things into small amounts, but I have been invited sometimes to work for 4 days at a time with whole
Yeah.
groups of children.
Yeah. So
So
you
entire days. Yeah.
yeah. So you brought up what are some of the things you're teaching them? What are some of the subjects that you've
Mm-hmm.
developed in the True to You program?
Right. One very foundational was, what are the different kinds of love?
Right.
And how are you training your brain for them? So I base that off of Plato's conversations around love. And he, as being a Greek philosopher, had the luxury of 8 different words. One would be eros, which would be a using kind of love, very passionate though, very excited, but the same way we have passion for cheesecake,
Yeah.
speaking for myself. And of course then there's agape, which he said was almost divine, who loves like that, and it would be more selfless and sacrificial, unconditional, committed, and giving, as opposed to eros. So that would be the foundation of whether we're talking about healthy or unhealthy relationships. It's like they all kind of go back to, when somebody uses the word love, what do they mean?
Right.
So, and that right by itself opens up so much conversation,
Right.
because you can
Because I don't think
literally train your brain for
people
one
don't
or
know
the
what
other.
people don't know what love is. We've been
No,
told that
no.
it's been presented in media and in movies or whatever as a certain thing. Maybe
A
it's
feeling.
romance. It's a feeling, right?
It's a feeling.
but love goes so much further than that. And
Yes.
so I really like what you said. You have to, you have to lay it out. So today we're focusing on kind of trying to help parents understand how to have these conversations with their kids, how to build relationship with their kids in a day and age that we're in, because there's so much influencing them. So why don't we just jump right into that? What would be some advice or some thoughts you have, or what you've been teaching some parents that really hit home? Maybe you could even share some stories or illustrations of how it hit home.
Well, I call my parent training courses 1,000 little conversations, because the courage that we can have is when we feel like we've blown it with one conversation, we get 999 left. I mean, that's at least, right?
Right.
And they don't have to be long, intense, in-depth conversations. They can be driving by a billboard and go, what do you think about that? And actually just having maybe, the student sitting next to you going, well, I don't know. Say, wow, because this is what pops into mind. And you can't really go wrong when you ask for somebody's opinion. And what I do notice is I've worked with teenagers since I was a teenager. And I am probably more comfortable with teenagers than I am with infants, although I'm getting, as a grandma, that's very exciting to start again. But teenagers and young adults are probably my sweet spot of conversations. And really, in so many ways, they have not changed, because at the human level, the very basic level, we all want love and we all want respect. We want to know and be known and deeply respected. And so if we can pull those two things together, and when we love and respect somebody, we're curious and we're not so quick to tell them what they should do, shoulding on them. But we get to explore with questions. And then depending on what stage we are in parenting, if you are in the teen stage, well, you're in a coach stage, so you're not as much telling them what's right and wrong all the time, because they probably, if I asked your kid right now, what do you think your parent thinks about that? They could probably tell me, and they could be incorrect about that. But then you can always, then start discussing, do you tend towards what they believe about that or not? And, who is your greatest influencer? Because that's another part that when I'm teaching, I ask people basically, who's in your front row? Who are you learning from? Because when a student grows up, they become like their teacher. So who's teaching you? And if it's a stranger on social media who doesn't feel like a stranger anymore, they're your new best friend.
Right.
That is who you're going to be trying to emulate. And yet what's so encouraging is parents still have, according to research, still have a huge, huge influence on their kids.
Right.
And I remember my friend talking about walking into her son's room, and because she had 4 kids, and she was a single mom. Three of the girls she had felt comfortable with talking about things, especially in the area of sexuality. But her son, she's thinking, I need to talk with him. And she was right about that. Sometimes parents just wait on that instead of starting those conversations early on. By the way, I have some great resources that I can post afterwards, or you can look on the website to encourage parents to have these conversations. But anyway, she goes into his room. He's about 10. She sits on the edge of his bed and says, honey, I just think we need to talk about sex. And all of a sudden, the blanket's over his head, right? And he is not moving. Suddenly he's turned to this petrified wood underneath the blanket, and she's just trying to step out there and risk a little bit, and she can't get him to respond. So she just goes, well, I broach the subject, I open the door, I might as well just sit here and talk until I can't think of anything else. So for about half an hour, she just starts talking about everything from pornography to femininity to masculinity to, because every parent's desire is to pass on their values to their child.
Sure.
And she feels like a complete failure because he hasn't budged. You can't even hear him breathing. She's not sure he's alive anymore. After half an hour, she gets up, exits the room, and thinks, well, that was a waste of time. Until 4 days later, she overhears him on the phone with his friends. Oh, no, well, my mom said, and he quotes her word for word. So even when you think they're not listening, they're listening. So which is why if I really wanted to get my kids to know something, because I'm kind of a teacher, I try to stuff into their, when the window's open, I want to, if I'd want them to know something, instead of trying to get to talk to them directly, I would talk to my husband in the front of the van and go, did you know this? Da, 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 blah, 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 blah. And they'd be like listening in, thinking they shouldn't be listening, right? So that's even part of the 1,000 little conversations. But kids, people, but specifically teenagers, and even more so, I've noticed teenage
Right.
boys are very sensitive to disrespect.
Right.
And I was kind of famous for unwittingly disrespecting my kids, because when I
Right.
asked a question, my face looked like I wanted to kill you, because
Right.
I was, if I'm not focused and really deliberate, my
Right.
serious face gets into an angry look. So I'd have to watch that. I have to watch my tone, my body language,
Right.
because I could unwittingly shut them down.
Right.
So I
I
know it
want.
sounds crazy to just say love and respect and curiosity,
Yeah.
but those really, when it comes down to it, we all want to know and be known. We all want to be respected. So having great opening questions, and I grab a whole bunch of them, and I've created a whole bunch of conversation openers. And the worst thing that can happen is they're not interested right then, and you get
Right.
to go, okay, I do want to talk about this sometime.
Give
So
give
give it a
give us a
thought. We'll
give a
come back
couple of those.
around.
Give us a
Yeah.
couple of those openers. What are some opening
Um,
questions that you could ask?
well, just what do you think about fill in the blank?
Blank. Right.
What are your friends saying about fill in the blank? Which is a safer way, because then they're a degree
Third
removed
person.
from it,
Right.
and they're more likely. What are the kids in your class saying about? Because then they can say the wildest, craziest thing. And I have to work on my poker face.
Right. Yeah. Don't go like.
Because that
Don't
might
look
be
smart.
what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And I get
Right.
to just go, huh, what do you
Yeah.
think about that? And where do you think they got that? And
Right.
I wonder if they're aware of this research, or I wonder if they've thought about how that would impact them in the future.
That's
You
really
know,
good.
that's interesting. And then trying not to make too much of it, but just get them talking. Say more. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from? So the curiosity, kind of like becoming this little,
Detective.
detective. Yeah,
That's
that
really
is
good.
so it's not really or I love using Brené's Brown, her little question of what's the story in your head.
Yeah.
Something just happened. Hey, what's the story in your head about that?
Right.
Using media, especially, you hear a song
Yeah.
or you watch a show and you go, huh, I noticed some themes there. I wonder how that would affect things in real life if you played out that things like that.
Right.
And you're helping them develop their prefrontal cortex, thinking about how what they're doing right now is affecting, it could affect their future.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
more exploratory, more exploratory, exploratory.
Story.
I just
Yeah.
made up a word.
Hey,
Look at
just
that.
make up as many as you want.
Yeah,
This.
I do it all the time. Funnest. This is the funnest to hang
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
with Mark. Other questions, like discovering them just as a person. So, what's the best time of the day to talk to you about really tricky things?
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
Because they're
I like
discovering
it.
themselves. Where are the best places to talk about tricky things?
Right.
And then creating atmospheres and environments. I had one mom, she said she regularly would take the dog for a walk and take a different child every time.
Right.
And on those walks, they would talk about everything from, the dog and his ridiculous pooping habits, how he would poop everywhere, to, to talk about girls or
Right.
teachers or um, the value of honesty when it's hard to be honest,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
took my
and
girls
then,
out.
and then,
I took my girls out on dates, and I treated
yeah,
it like a date. We'd
yeah,
get dressed up, and
yeah,
I'd open the door for them and close the
yeah,
door.
so
And
good. Now,
they're in their 30s now, and they still call me and say, "Can we go on a date this
oh,
week?"
I love that.
So
Well, the thing about going for a walk is you don't, unlike a date, often if it's face to
yeah.
face, you get to be side by side,
Yes.
which is, I raised boys. I had all boys.
Right.
So that's where we had the better talks in the car, locked, driving,
They couldn't
uh,
jump out.
or side by side. And she's told her
Right.
kids, all of them, if you ever feel like, I want to talk to you about something without my siblings hearing
Yeah.
it,
Right.
just say, hey, can I walk the dog with you today?
Right. Great.
So it creates
Great
just
strategy.
us. You gotta walk the dog anyways.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
That's a great idea. I like that. I
talk
like
about
that.
nothing to everything, and let them know the things you're learning. So you
Yeah.
can bring up like, let's say you just read something about the average age of first exposure to pornography in Canada is 8 years old.
Wow.
You can go, wow. So this is what I just heard. Do you think any of your friends started that young or younger?
Right.
You know, when's the first time you remember seeing pornography? And they go, what's pornography? And then you get to grab the book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. If they're under the age of 12, it's
Yeah.
such a good book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. I recommend it all the time. You can get it on Amazon.
Right.
And otherwise, you go, if they're teenagers, you look up Fight the New Drug and you become the most educated. Because Fight the New Drug it's not political, it's not religious, it's science. How it starts changing the brain. So here, if you show that you're not afraid of these conversations, even though you're terrified. I mean, my mouth would go dry if I asked the question, but you just throw it out there and you let it sit. And the worst thing that can happen is they're not going to bite, but they'll think about it.
Yeah.
And they'll know you're not afraid of it.
I often tell parents, like, the more conversation you have about nothing, the more opportunities you'll get to talk about something.
Oh, that's good.
And so I agree with that. And I always also say quality time happens within quantity time. And so you'll never, ever regret investing time into your children. And I know life is busy. And I know that, I used to get criticized for taking my kids to school. Like, well, let them take a bus. Why don't you let them just walk? Like, why are you pampering them? And I said, no, because on the way to and from school is where I find out everything that's going on in their life.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not, and sometimes they're not telling you. If you grab some of their friends to drop them off too, then you hear them talk and you're like, oh, I'm learning so much.
Absolutely. And then when the last one's dropped off and we're on the way home, I'll just say, wow, your friends had some, they got a lot going on. What do you think of that? Right. And so then you're asking that question again. So, or how does that impact you? Or,
right. And so after you do the exploratory, then you can say, hey, would you like some input on that? Or, and that allows you to, or you can come back around an hour later after you've thought about it, or a couple of days later after you've cooled down over it and say, I have some thoughts on that.
Okay, teachable moment, Darlene. You just brought something up because here's a failure I did. Okay, so we're transparent on this show. Here's what I did one time. Jenna, my youngest, we'd pick her up, and she would get in the car and immediately start talking about all the friend drama, and she would all the relationship drama, whatever. And I would always offer advice because I'm the relationship expert after all. And so
people pay you for your advice. Why would she want to hear it?
So this one day she jumps in the car, starts on, and I start giving her advice. She said, Dad, just stop. And I says, what? And she said, I'm your daughter. I know what I need to do. I'm just venting.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay. And it was such a valuable lesson. And we made an agreement right there. I said, I tell you what, from now on, and this holds to this day, if you want my advice, ask for it. Yeah. And before I give it, I'm going to ask you if you'd like it. Can we make that agreement? And she said, yes. And from then on, what was amazing is she actually started asking for my advice more.
Wow.
Because she didn't feel it was imposed anymore. She felt like we actually had a relationship and we actually could converse back and forth. And, even to this day now, there's times I'll even ask her for her input on a relationship or with mom or whatever. Because the kids had the freedom to do that. One time there was a season there where Sandy and I had a lot of tension in the home, and Jenna was still at home and the other two were grown and gone. And I remember at 11 o'clock at night, the two siblings show up from their houses and we're ready to go to bed. And they said, nope, we're having a family meeting. I said, okay. And they actually challenged Sandy and I and said, listen, we don't care what's going on. We don't need to tell us what's going on, but we grew up in a loving environment, and Jenna is like full of anxiety because of your guys' tension. Whatever it is, deal with it because that she deserves that or whatever. And I was so proud of them. I was also super convicted. But I was also, and we kind of at the end, Sandy and I were laughing because we said, I think we just got like an intervention by our kids. But the thing that spoke to me is they had the freedom to do that. Yeah. And that's what I think the culture we want to. So for parents out there listening, the culture you want to create is not one of you listen to me because I'm your parent, but it's one that you actually start to develop. Now, this is age appropriate. And I want to loop right back, Darlene, to something you said. You said when they come into teen years, then you move from parent to coach.
Well, from cop to coach, actually.
From cop to coach, yeah. So can you just expand on that a little bit? What these stages of parenting? Because I think it's really important, because people don't understand those stages. And because I know some of those conversations I've had recently are parents that are trying to still be the cop in the teenager's life, and they haven't moved to the coach role. How do you do that?
So good.
What are they? And then how do you go from one to the next?
Okay. And then make me come back to your question, because it was such a good question you asked your daughter about listening.
Yes.
So we heard this at a place called JH Ranch in California, and it just fit with the developmental stages. And we had used different language before, but all these start with the letter C, so they're easy to remember. Caregiving stage is about 0 to 5. You're trying to keep them alive. You're trying to get them going, teaching them the very basic things of life. And then cop stage is about 6 to, it depends, because some kids will move into puberty a whole lot faster, and there'll be different areas. But cop would be traditionally about 6 to 12. So cop mode, you are teaching them right and wrong. You're teaching them appropriate and inappropriate, dangerous and safe. And for the most part, in the cop stage, you know that you're still in the cop stage when your kids are responding with, oh, my mom said, or my dad said, and or grandma said, and there's a willingness to, as long as you're being respectful with them, a willingness to kind of submit to your knowledge. Right. But then something happens in puberty, or puberty, as we call it sometimes, where because it feels like poo from the person who's actually going through it, and sometimes the people around them as well. And there's this individuation, which is healthy and normal, but feels really strange to some parents who are very tender to being disrespected, where you need to move into a coach mode.
Right.
And the coach mode is running alongside. They're playing the game. You're helping them kind of define what their goal is, what they want to get good at. You're asking them questions more like, what do you want? And how can I help you get there? And then you are running alongside, calling out help from the sidelines, and then gathering them back in and say, oh, that didn't go so well. So what can we do better next time? Because in general, by the age of 12, most kids that I talk to, that are in that range, they can already tell you what their parents think about things. Right. Generally speaking. Mm-hmm. So when the parent continues to cop them throughout their coaching years, they start kind of shutting the voice down.
Right.
But the coach, again, even though they're still living out their values and permeating their family life with their values, they're helping their kids define if the values are going to be part of their future.
Right.
So, and just even think about the difference between a cop and a coach. And I'm talking about a good cop. I'm not talking about a cop who throws around his authority, or a coach who throws around his authority. Right. I'm saying in the most positive ways, a cop is keeping you safe and you're really glad they're there. It's like, whoo, come on in. And
relational authority.
Coach, and a good coach, you're like, hey, when they say that's not going to get you to the Olympics, that got you this far, but we need to change some habits around here to get you where you want to go. You're like, ugh! But yeah, you're right. Right. So we don't love being told we're wrong. None of us want to believe we are, but that is still a coaching environment, and you are releasing more and more responsibility to them in these years, and giving them more and more freedoms as they're proving how responsible they are. Yeah. Right. So you're letting them know, even in cop mode, especially if you have kids of different ages, hey, there's going to come a time where I'm going to be more your coach. Okay. So that's going to be coming. And as you become more responsible, you're going to get more freedoms. And if you abuse your freedoms, we're going to have to pull back on some of those freedoms. And then around 18, when, I know this doesn't happen as much anymore, but when children leave home,
more like 28
some people are like, yeah, I know, like what, right?
38.
But still at 18, there's a feeling of, okay, now I'm an adult, even though the majority of students in university in their first year or college will say they're not sure they're adults. Like, that's
Right.
crazy how the definition of adulthood is such up in the air. It's a big question mark. But you can sense there's a difference and a change, and that's when you want to start moving into consultant mode. So with my sons, I'm in consultant mode.
Right.
I get to wait for them to come to me with their requests for advice or input, or I get to offer it. Would you like my input in this? And they can say no.
I have another
No,
C
thank you.
word. I have another C
Yep.
word for every stage. Cheerleader.
Cheerleader. Yes. So that's what we added that to JH Ranch. We put cheerleader under all of them.
Yes.
Because we're like, throughout the whole time, we want to be able to celebrate them, right?
Yes.
And be that, how can I support you? What can I do to, so it doesn't, you don't stop and just back off with consultant phase, but in terms of advice, like with caregiving, you are advising them all the time. This is how you put your pants on. It's not on here. It's this way, right?
Yeah.
And with COP, it's, it's cold out there. You're going to take a sweater. I don't know, and coach is like, hey, the weather looks a little, it's kind of rough out there. What are you planning on wearing? And consultant, my son will walk in and it's freezing outside, but he's 32 for crying out loud. So I get to go, would you like a sweater? Because I don't stop being a mom. I never will.
No.
Right?
No, and nor should you. Right?
No.
Hey, I want to remind everybody, ask questions. Nobody's making comments. Make comments, ask questions. We want to hear from you. So please make sure you're doing that. You might just be caught up in Darlene's wisdom here and forgetting, but just write down some questions or even some comments, because we really do want to acknowledge you and respond to you. We want this to be a shared experience. So let's loop back. You wanted to loop back to that question thing with my daughter.
I had a friend recently say to me that she's been using these 3 questions that she was encouraged to do, and I just thought it was good that she put them into 3 questions. When your child is opening up, and some of you have kids that you're like, when do they not open up? They share way too much and they can't shut them down. Some of you have kids that you're just, come on, anything. How are you? Beyond one word answers. But when your child does start opening up, to respond with these 3 questions, would you like me to just listen? Would you like my input? Or would you like me to help you problem solve? Like, just, and you can create your own language around that, because problem solving is not the same thing as advice. It's like, okay, let's sit here, let's work through pros and cons. But your input is kind of like your opinion, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that you told your daughter, I'm gonna just listen.
Yeah.
Right? And so let your kids know, that's so empowering. And she said when her daughter called she was in another state, and she called her and said, oh, Mom, and she started offloading everything. And her mom was prepared, at any moment I'm going to ask these questions, I'm going to figure out what she wants. All of a sudden, I got to go, hangs up. She gets the most beautiful text the next day from her daughter going, Mom, you just support me so well. I can't believe the way. And she's like, I didn't even get to,
Yeah. I call it the power of presence.
Yes.
Just be present in your kid's life. That will go a long ways, just to be present. That's why I like the dog walking story. Or I often tell parents, invite them to come and do to do errands with you, or to whatever. Find a reason, and then or go in them. I'd go all to Justin's hockey games, to Jaylene's soccer games, to I went to every event and was there and present, and I use the illustration quite often for parenting. My son loved hockey, played goaltender. I could equip him. I could get him all the equipment he needed to do the job. I could cheer him on. I could even probably give him some pointers. I could coach a little bit and give him some pointers from my view on the stands. I could facilitate by paying for it. The one thing I couldn't do is get on the ice and play for him.
That's right.
He had to play the game. All I could do is cheer him on and then give him some pointers if he wanted them. And that's really a picture of parenting. I think sometimes parents get far too involved in some ways. It's probably because it reflects on us, right? If our kid doesn't behave well or doesn't do something that I ask, then they disrespect me, or they're making me look bad. And I think that when we come out of that place, we actually can do a lot of damage. If we just realize maybe they just forgot, or they just our job is to encourage and support. Hey, we have a good question here. From Rose. It says, how do you balance the tension between being a gentle, respectful parent and still setting firm boundaries? Great question, Rose. Great question. So, Darlene, how do you balance the tension between being a gentle, respectful parent and still setting firm boundaries?
I think she answered it.
By setting
right?
firm boundaries.
So by setting firm boundaries in a gentle way, like
Right.
our tone, our body language,
Yeah.
our words, we can come across with this, we're laying down the law.
Yeah.
And, our kids, depending on their temperament, may bend to it. But if we're able to say, this is a boundary, like nobody survives without boundaries.
Yeah.
Right.
In
And
fact, kids don't feel secure without them.
No.
Yeah.
So this is, and it might be that your boundaries are different than your neighbor's boundaries. Well, what about Jeffrey's family? Well, these are our family's boundaries. This is
Right.
what we've talked about, we've decided, and this is what our family's going to look like. So these are the boundaries, and sticking to them in a gentle but firm way. So she really, she put it together. And I love that. It's like it's intuitive. And how do you stick to it? By sticking to it, which is exhausting.
That's
when you have a child that wants to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and you get to fill them in every once in a while on how that comes across to you without turning into inverted parenting, without making them take care of you, but saying, this is getting a little tiring. We've talked about this. I've counted like 6 times in the last week. I'm not going to change at this point. You are now allowed to check in about the change in this boundary once a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do a little your check mark on the calendar. And if you want to write me a paper, my kids would write papers and say, okay, 5 minutes. We just want 5 minutes every time. We're going to try and negotiate a change in this. And I'm open to it, but I'm not open to it consistently or all the time. And we'd have family meetings every once in a while to go if there was going to be a change. And they would get an opportunity to express their thoughts about that. When the best time to have family meetings, though, are when things aren't bad. And so you get to talk about what works together for all of you in a family, and saying this is going to be our family boundary. And then at that time, when everyone's in a good mood, maybe put out sandwiches or chips, depending on what you allow in your home, whatever I would use to bribe them with. No, good mood, having everyone, tummies full, rested, and say, okay, what would be the natural consequences, or what would be the results if somebody doesn't follow through with this boundary, so that it's an agreed upon thing. It's written down, it's clear, so it's not a big surprise. And life is full of surprises. So as many things as we can take out of the surprise bucket, that can be helpful.
Well, I always say boundaries protect relationships; they don't harm them. So I agree with being gentle and respectful is a behavior. Keeping a boundary is a decision. So they're two different things. Like, you don't have to keep a boundary. You don't have to yell and scream and freak out. It's even better if you calm down. I know when I was teaching, the Heroes program in the schools, and I'm, teaching grade 8s, I would actually get quieter if I was trying to get their attention. I'd speak quieter, and then they're all like zeroing in on what I'm saying, rather than raising my voice. I have another story just to illustrate from my own world. What often I would do is I would combine the cheerleading and the gentleness and respectful and kindness with the boundary. In other words, Justin one time was mouthing his mom off, and he had a birthday party to go to that weekend. And I try to put the decisions. I want to teach my kids to have good decision making skills, so I try to always put the decision on him, right? So I came home, and mom tells me about what happened, and I said to him, I said, "Oh, son, I'm so sorry you made that decision." He says, "What decision?" I said, "You made a decision not to go to the party the second you mouthed off your mom."
Ooh.
And I said, he said, "No, I didn't." I said, "Yeah, no, you did. I'm so sorry." I said, "I was so excited for you to go to that party."
So good.
And I was really excited. I was even going to just check in on it because it sounded fun. But listen, I can't, you made that decision by speaking poorly to your mom after she warned you not to. So I said, listen, I'm so sorry, but you're not going to the party. Well, he like, and so then he was getting smart. He made the connection. Oh, if I'm nice to mom, I'll probably get to go to the party. So now the rest of the week, I think this was a Tuesday or Wednesday, so parties on Saturday, he was like super helpful. Can I do some chores, mom? Can I, and he was trying to earn his way back to the party. And the day came and he said, Dad, I've been like super respectful to mom. I've been helping around the house. So that deciding to go to the party? And I said, well, not really. I said, those were good decisions, and I'm going to reward you for those decisions. But the decision not to go to the party was already made.
Wow.
And so I'm sorry you can't go to the party. But I tell you what, because you've made such good decisions this week, I'm going to take you out and we're going to go do something fun together. And we did. And he loved it. He didn't talk about the party ever again. But the point was, is I was gentle, I was kind, I was even like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like empathizing, but I wasn't going to change the decision. That was your decision to make, son.
Yeah.
And I am going to hold to my boundary. You're not going to go to that party. But then he did change his attitude. So I wanted to reward good behavior and good decision making. So then I took him somewhere else and we did something fun.
Because there are real consequences to our behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that isn't always taught. So then when people graduate or they go to, into the workforce, they're infuriated because of the results of their choices. And there's, how did this happen? Because if we consistently take away the consequences, then we're actually enabling our children to remain children and never become the adults that we dream of them. And we know that they're to be. And so I really love it when people understand that in the coaching phase, especially, you want them to fail in front of you. You want them to have an experience of failing. So number one, they experience your unconditional love. I'm still there for you. Yeah, you screwed up. I do too sometimes. Stinks, doesn't it? But I'm still here for you. Let's see how we can, make the best of this. You want them to fail, and you want them to develop that resiliency to get back up again. Okay, now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Right? And you want them to be able to do it there, because otherwise, if there are only boundaries, let's say, unlimited, there's, I work with all the way from families who have no boundaries, it looks like no boundaries, to completely everything's a boundary. And I'll say to parents, if you are going to say you get half an hour screen time a day until they go to university, what do you think their screen time is going to look like in university?
Yeah.
If they go away. So, the freedoms need to increase as they age. And what doesn't feel fair, though, is because their younger sibling is looking at the older sibling going, how come? Well, and that's when you get to go, oh, there's going to come a coaching phase of parenting. There's going to come a consultant phase of parenting. Right now, you're in this phase. But the more responsible you are, the faster you can get freedoms. You can get freedoms at 8 years old that a 16-year-old might not get, because I'm being kind of extreme.
But
you get my point.
Show me your good decision making, and you'll earn that responsibility.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is sometimes we put boundaries on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
What if we put boundaries on the positive? What if we put we gave attention for the positive things they do, or caught them doing good things instead of catching them do bad things? Because it tends it feels sometimes to kids, I think, like they only get attention when they're bad or when they do something wrong. But what if we caught them doing something strong instead of wrong? Right?
Well, that's scanning for the positive. And I know I started messing with my guys, and they were older elementary, when I would every once in a while go, okay, we need to talk. And they would come and sit down on the couch, and they're ready for me to go, okay. And I'd be like, I caught you loving your brother so well when he was kind of being a jerk. Like, wow. Okay, just wanted to tell you.
Right.
I'm going to go make supper now.
Awesome.
They're like, what? And I know that kind of throws them a little bit, but you do want to catch them. You want to catch them with the good, because that creates this positive sentiment override. It's like, I'm scanning for the good in you. And sometimes I'm scanning really hard because I've had a bad day, or you're just not giving me the good feels right now. But that agape love, that unconditional love is like, good day, bad day, I'm there for you. And it's not a feeling.
Awesome.
It's not feeling. Rose, I'm there for your best.
Yeah, that's it, right? Rose, if we answered your question, hit the like button or comment again. But yeah, if we answered that question, I hope that helped you out. That was a great answer, Darlene. I like that. That was
Well,
good.
and something else too is I mentioned before that the number one desire for parents is to pass on their values, whatever their values are. And when you have strong values, sometimes the culture around you doesn't support those values.
Yeah.
So I like using these two words together, compassionate conviction.
Yeah.
So if you have a
Mm,
value that is kind of counterculture, that you ensure, and I have to ensure that I am not coming across as judgmental or
right.
intolerant of somebody else's choice, but
Right.
just saying this is not what I found to be the healthiest,
Right.
most life-giving decision for me. And this is the way our family is going to operate. And of course, in your future family, you're going to get to choose what values
Right.
that you're going to pass on to your kids. But if you can put those two things together, then it's more likely our children will consider them as opposed to just disregard them. Because
Right.
sometimes our convictions can come across when we just make comments about people or they
Mm,
overhearing us speaking about them, and it comes across as very judgy. And this
yeah.
generation is really sensitive to judgy.
Yeah.
Don't judge anybody for anything
Yeah.
unless you're disagreeing. And then if you're disagreeing, you should be judged. So our posture can be, oh man, I'm really sad they made that choice because I don't think that was the healthiest for them. Which
Right.
even my tone, my facial expression shows compassion,
Right.
but with great conviction, because if we can't disagree,
Yeah.
then we have lost a free society.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
true. And this is you're hitting right in the center, I think, of the problem today with the culture, the cancel culture, the identity crisis,
Yeah.
the gender crisis, all of these things. And you and I have values around that and positions on it, but that's not the point. The point is that our kids, if we do come across judgy, because we are judging,
Yeah.
especially, then what happens is we're not they're not going to listen to us.
Mm,
They're not going to hear anything else we have to say.
yep.
And in this culture today, even more so. But at the same time, I don't want to teach my kids that they can't stand up for what they believe in, or
Absolutely.
that they can't live that way, right? And so I just I love that conviction, compassion, those two words. By the way, the word conviction in Latin means to be convinced or to be
Mm,
utterly convinced. And I really
mm-hmm,
like that. So I'm convinced of my
mm-hmm,
value, that it's important because
mm-hmm,
it served me well. But
mm-hmm,
I'm going to have compassion on someone else or
mm-hmm,
have empathy for someone else
mm-hmm,
that may not have
mm-hmm,
experienced that kind of value in
mm-hmm,
their life.
mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's where I think that comes in, right?
And I
Like,
do think
how do
that
parents
especially,
navigate all that today? How do we
oh,
navigate?
yeah, especially in the teen years, though, what
Yeah.
I noticed, and it was better with one son than it was with um, the other in teen years, was the ability to say, how about we do a debate about this? Because I think the art of debate has been lost without
Yeah.
calling each other names
Yeah.
or doing the face or what, just kind of quick, because that's the way to just shut it down. And it's a very
Yeah.
unintelligent way of conversing. It's like, how about we debate the merits of these maybe two or three positions, but let's just start with two.
Yeah.
And which one are you more inclined toward? Which one am I more inclined toward? And let's do the opposite. Let's
Right.
see if I can debate the opposite of what my
Mm,
conviction is. Because what happens is we either refine what we believe or we're willing to consider moving a little bit. And
right.
we're teaching our kids um, to be really thoughtful and to have a ability to think critically. And I don't mean with a critical spirit or with criticism,
Yeah.
but to be able to really pull an idea apart, because so many things that are being purported today just have this little quick meme or a byline. And how do you
Right.
argue with that, right?
Right.
When it requires a dialogue, it requires
Yeah.
more of a conversation. This is not a snippet. This is not a tweet. This
Yeah.
is a usually values are multifaceted dimensions that if we can continue talking about and saying, we can give it 15 minutes We can say, let's see if we can do this without getting really heated. And again, if we can take the opposite perspective, even if you and your child are on the same page and you're aware that some of their friends are on a very different page, say, okay, let's argue their side. Not with them, but just you and me right now in the car as we're driving. Let's argue their side. Where do you think they're coming from? And what is there anything that we could say that would encourage them to consider another opinion?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if we and it's not about arguing someone into a different position again, but questions are powerful. And the two questions that I ask that I get the most mileage of in my classes, with either with parents or with students that will use it on each other or their families. What do you want? And what are you willing to do to get it?
Right.
Like, what do you want? What kind of relationship do you want? What kind of environment do you want? What kind of life do you want? What kind of person do you want to be? What are you willing to do to get it? And then is what you're doing right now getting you closer to or further from that? So even with your family dynamic, what do you want in your family? What do you want our family to feel like when you walk in this door? Oh, I want it to feel like this, this, and this, and this. Right. Okay, let's put those things. Let's maybe do pictures or put those words on the fridge, and then we can ask ourselves every once in a while, is what I'm doing right now getting us closer to that or further? Because I contribute all the time. I'm not a static person. Wow. By me just staying out of the conversation, I'm communicating something, whether I mean to or not. And the opportunity to be misunderstood is constant. And I have never had an experience of being more humbled than being a parent. There's nothing harder on me. Marriage was tricky. Oh my word. And still is sometimes, but like we really like each other and we work through a lot of stuff to the point where he better not go anywhere because I really, I'm in this. I like him.
He's pretty cute.
He's so cute. But parenting, oh my word, I read the books. My kids didn't though. Right? Yeah. And even though I worked with teenagers and I love teenagers, my own made me want to rip my hair out sometimes, right?
Right.
So there's no like somebody's got it figured it out. We just get to keep encouraging each other. And you know what? If we can just stay talking with our kids and leave space in between. And again, watch my affect.
Yeah.
Make connecting the most important thing. And then see if I can argue their point, reflect a little bit. Boy, if I'd experienced that, I'd be pretty upset about that. If I thought somebody was talking down to me the way you think I've been talking down to you, I'd be hurt and I wouldn't want to talk to me.
Right.
Is that how it is?
Wow.
And then just leave it a little bit and come back later. And an apology is only as good as the willingness to own it, to jump into the other person's feelings, and the willingness to change and say, okay, I'm going to work on this. Let's figure this out. And we're going to be figuring it out for the rest of our lives. And then lastly, to be able to say, would you start forgiving me for missing you,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
So
just,
powerful.
I'm sorry, because Canadians were famous for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Our buses apologize. Have you noticed that? I've never been anywhere in the world where the buses apologize, but Canada.
Sorry, out of service.
Yeah. Other countries, walk, buddy. What's your problem?
So I've heard some parents say, I wish I had a sorry out of service.
Oh, that's good. Oh man.
One of those demanding days. Yeah.
I was done. Oh, if I could ever not hear the word "what's for supper" again, I'd be in, like heaven. Yeah.
Man, Darlene, there's been so many nuggets here today. I want to really encourage the watchers. Like, if you come across this and listening, share it with parents, share it with your friends, share it with if you've got a friend that is struggling with conversations with their teenager, I really encourage you to send this video to them. And if you still got time to ask a question if you want, but we're getting close to the end of the hour, and wow, that went by fast. But I wonder, Darlene, if there's any kind of there's been so much advice in here and practical takeaways, but if when you're sitting down with parents and you're teaching a workshop, and at the end of the workshop they come up to talk to you, what's the one thing you'd want to leave them with? Like, what is the one thing you want them to leave the audience with today about parenting, or about their teenagers, about their kids?
Don't quit. if you don't quit, you win.
That's so
Because
good.
if you don't quit, and you might need to go regroup, you may need to go get some assistance, some advice, some help from outside. Don't quit, because our kids feel it when they feel like we quit. And that is, the studies have said that the vast majority of teenagers feel like they're alone. And they feel like the adults in their life have agendas for them, as opposed to just trying to help them be their very best. And so the loneliness crisis is huge. And I think the big thing that made me want to quit so many times was I felt rejected.
Right.
You know, and we get very sensitive. Nobody likes rejection.
Yeah.
And when our kids are pushing back, to be able to go, okay, how do I not take this personally? It's personal, right? So I just got to go for a angry walk and get it all out and come back in and try one more time to say that sometimes they're pushing away because of what's going on inside them. And we're just that voice, you know, that mom or that dad or that grandma that just, we are not quitting, and we get to go, I'm not quitting on you. We're going to figure this out because you're too important. Like, I'm not going anywhere. You're mine. I'm yours. We're stuck with each other. Let's figure this out. Let's make it work for us. Because if I feel like somebody's in there, they have my back, and they're not going to bail, man, that's pretty great. Hey,
that goes a long ways. Like, it just goes so far, and more than you know. And that's the other thing I want to say is, you said it earlier, Darlene, is like,
I'm starting to cry. I'm thinking about how wonderful it is, right?
It is, because, you know, you said it earlier. It's like the kids just need to know you're there for them, that you're there. It goes so far. That power of presence goes so far. You just don't know. And so don't, I love that. So don't quit. My advice, you know, my final takeaway for you is, it's never too late.
That's right.
You know what?
It's never
A lot of water can go under the bridge.
They can be 40. Your kids can be 40, 50, 60.
There's lots of pain that has happened in the offering. Don't try to fix everything from the past. Just establish something new today and say, you know what? I love you. You're my child. I don't matter what's happened in the past. I am here. I'm present, and I'm here for you, and I believe in you. It goes so far in a young person's life. So often we make it about ourselves instead of making it about them, you know. And I love that, Darlene. It's so true. This generation, if we can, you know, you get me emotional here. If we could just leave you with something today, Darlene and I would be so happy if you could just hear us. This generation is desperate for connection and love. Connection and love. And you have the best connection and the best love to offer them, but beyond anybody else in this world. You have the exact thing they need, and they may be acting like they don't. They might be acting like you're the last person they want to come to, but I'm telling you today, please believe me, like Darlene said earlier, they hear more than you know. They hear you more than you know. And when you say things like, I love you, I am here for you, I will never give up on you, I want you to know those seeds go into their hearts. And it might be rejected in the moment. Do not take it as rejection. Don't quit. Don't give up.
Quit. What did Winston Churchill say? When you're going through hell, don't stop, keep going.
Like, why would you want to stay in hell? That's right.
Get through. Why would you want to stay there?
You don't want to stay there. That's too funny. Yeah, thanks. Bill Holden made a comment. He says, you guys are amazing. So much wisdom to share. I wish all parents could listen to this. So do I, Bill. So make sure we share this out and learn from it. Amazing content. You're both treasures. Oh, thanks, Bill. You're a treasure as well.
And this stuff relates to whatever age your child is, as I said before. Like, and many of us are still children. So we can, with our parents, going, what can we do to make this better? You know? Relationships are just too important. Somebody said relationships matter.
Yeah, I don't know who that
relationship matters. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I gotta get that
both. I mean, we talk about relationship matters, but it's because they do matter, right?
They do. They really do.
But thank you for the plug. So, Darlene, You've got great resources on your website
Thank
and
you.
on the True to You website that you said are available. So there you go, everybody. I'll
Yeah.
also put in the comments afterwards. I'll put this address there, but it's true to you Okanagan.com. Don't forget the Okanagan on there. True to you Okanagan.com. And there's resources on there, those like some of those questions that Darlene was sharing today. There's a whole bunch more. So make sure you go there. Also, I want to just encourage you, if you're watching this today and you are witnessing with what we're saying, like you see the crisis in young people out there today, would you just financially support it? There'll be a give button on there somewhere, I'm sure. It's a nonprofit, and they depend on donations from you and I to make sure that Darlene can be out in the schools and get out into these places and venues and helping people. Without those donations, these kinds of conversations are not happening. So we have to have you donate to True to You. So just go to their website and make sure that you will donate, because that will keep Darlene's program expanding. And she has in her heart to train others to start. Like, we want to see a multiplication happen for this, and because these are such important conversations. I can't. I mean, I know from my own experience, but Darlene, I'm sure you could tell people every day how these young people just soak up what you have to say. They just never heard these concepts before. That they
On their
can have love
evaluation,
without all the
one evaluation, it said, "What did you learn new?" And this girl goes, "Everything." And that
Yeah.
was one of those, like, everything. And so if there are places that there are schools or there are youth organizations, or you have parent groups that you would like to have workshops come in from True to You, wherever you are. We've been in different countries and different provinces, and I know Mark loves traveling. So now that we can travel, like, we'd love to come.
I think it's such important work you're doing. So please, folks, go to the true to you Okanagan.com. Just go to there and support and check it out and get the resources for yourself. I also want to remind you, for me, on the Relationship Matters, I've now got the 5 pillars of a healthy foundation. Every relationship is ready for your consumption. So just go to my website, markgordon.ca. It's super easy, markgordon.ca. And you're going to get all the resources I have on there. If it says what I do, just drop down and it says courses. That's the first of maybe 10 that I'm going to put up there eventually. And we want to just equip you and empower you to have healthy relationships so that you can have healthy culture in your homes and at work and wherever you are. And so I just want to make sure you remind there. And I'm offering, if you put appreciation in for a code as a checkout, you'll get 50% off. So that because you watch the show and because you're part of my family, Relationship Matters. And so that I want to just point that out to you as well. And thanks so much, Darlene. This has been great. This hour flew by. I think we almost need to do it again. These conversations got to get out there, and parents need this. So it's such an
It was a
important
pleasure.
time in lives of people, right?
It's a pleasure. And I love, Mark, your passion for people. Like, they really matter to you. Like, each person, that's what I love about spending time with you. I watch how you treat each person individually and with such value, because that communicates a lot.
Yeah. That's the grace of God. That's his grace in my life, because I wasn't like that before. But I do.
Agape.
And I do. And I appreciate that about
agape.
And I appreciate that about you and Kim as well. That's why we're such good friends. I have such high regard for you and high respect. And so thanks for all that you do. And folks, please go to truetoyouokanagan.com, make a donation, book Darlene in. You'll never regret booking her in. Get her to come into your organization, your community, and do a presentation. Her presentations are like world class. So you want to have her in. So I know that's a lot of pressure, isn't it? But anyway, it's true. Okay, everybody.
Thanks,
we'll see you next week, 1 o'clock Thursday, PM PST. Or, hey, watch on YouTube, watch on Relationship Matters page anytime. And also on Monday, the podcast of this will be released on all podcast platforms. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Talk to you again.